Hey YouTubers and Patriots, Voice of the Composer here. Welcome back to my channel. It's Friday. Got to talk about the Confederate battle flag again. As you know, this is an issue I care about. And we got an article here from thehill.com. North Carolina to stop issuing Confederate flag license plates. This is by Eris Foley. And this was published on January 30th of this year. But before we get to this article, got to talk about what's going on in D.C. Trump's defense team today is taking it to the Democrats. They're blowing them out of the water. And all they had to do was show all these video clips, which the Dems, quote-unquote, impeachment managers, as I mentioned yesterday, these people couldn't manage their way out of a wet paper bag. All they had to do, Trump's defense team, was show all these video clips in full. And nowhere in these video clips did you see any call for insurrection. Trump never instructed his supporters to engage in insurrection or any type of violence. And the one phrase that I mentioned yesterday that the Democrats purposefully left out of their video was the phrase peacefully and patriotically. That's exactly what Trump said. Now, this is great. There was this whole sticking point yesterday that Trump said fight like hell. And because he said fight like hell, that equaled insurrection. Well, hell. The Trump defense team showed at least a 5-minute montage. Seemed like it went on forever. Of all these Democrats saying fight like hell. We're going to fight like hell. It was great to watch. Fun and painful at the same time. So I'm loving every minute of this. Now they're having this Q&A session. So I got to check in with that here in a little bit after I do the video. See what's going on. Kind of bring you an update. You know, I might even do, if I have time, either tonight or tomorrow night, I might do a video on the overnight shift at work. I got to do the overnights tonight. But let's get to this article. But as I said, this is fantastic to see the Dems with their pants down, accusing Trump of insurrection or what have you. And all the Trump defense team had to do was play all these video clips, including the very famous clip after Charlottesville. Everybody says that Trump supports white supremacy and neo-Nazis. And when the Trump defense team showed this clip in full, Trump specifically condemned neo-Nazis and white supremacists. Love it. Love every minute of this. So how then can you impeach Trump, who's no longer in office, by the way? How can you impeach him? Did I say impeachment? Impeachment. How can you impeach President Trump for insurrection when he's no longer in office? And nowhere in these video clips did he mention anything about insurrection. Another thing that the Trump defense team did today, they showed all of these video clips of all the riots in Portland, Seattle, Minneapolis, Atlanta, you name it. And, this is great, and all of these Democrat representatives that were cheering on those riots, the looting, the burning down of these cities. And you want to say that Trump and his supporters believe in insurrection. So let's get to this article, once again by Eris Foley, thehill.com. North Carolina to stop issuing Confederate flag license plates. And once again, it was published on January 30th of this year. It says here, the North Carolina Division of Motor Vehicles said this week that it will stop issuing and renewing license plates that bear the Confederate flag. Oh no. Now, under the new policy, which took effect at the start of the year, the agency said in a statement to Star News Online on Monday that it, quote, will no longer issue or renew specialty license plates bearing the Confederate battle flag or any variation of that flag, unquote. Will they allow BLM flags or African national flags? What about the flag of ISIS or Native American symbols? Because guess what? Slavery existed in Africa long before there was the United States of America. In fact, slavery was built into the social hierarchy of African societies. Egypt, by the way, is in Africa. So Egypt, the Sudan, you have Ethiopia. There's slavery today in Chad, the Sudan, Mauritania. How come I don't hear anything from these ultra-left activists or SJWs about the slavery going on in that part of the world? And Native American tribes, by the way, did enslave other members of other tribes. 100% true, folks. And on the Trail of Tears, they were allowed to bring their slaves. Native Americans were allowed to bring their slaves with them. Trail of Tears. Now, I happen to have some Indian in my family, Cherokee or Iroquois. Those two tribes, as I've mentioned before, are related. And even I know that slavery existed at that time amongst these tribes. I don't feel guilty about that because guess what? That was then. This is now. Society was a lot different. Society was built more on a social or class structure. You know, I've been watching, for some reason, I've been fascinated all of a sudden with the Titanic. And I know that that is still a mystery to this day of what happened with the sinking of the Titanic. Got to see the interview with Ava Hart. Definitely check out these interviews with Ava Hart because when you watch this one, now this was done with a reporter out of Canada, so Canadian Broadcasting. But it's like this event happened yesterday. That's how fresh and how real that whole event seems even to this day. We know what happened. We have the video footage from these trips they made or expeditions they made down to the bottom of the ocean floor. And I remember growing up in 1985, I was a mere tot then, but I remember how big the discovery of the Titanic, or finding the ship was. In fact, it was so big that National Geographic had, I think, an entire issue dedicated to the Titanic. But I've been looking at all these documentaries about the Titanic, and on the Titanic, you can see this social class structure play out. And guess what, folks? That social class structure involved a lot of white Europeans, the lower British classes, the Irish, the Scottish, because in those days, these freighters, that's what they were known as at the time, were ocean liners. These freighters, ocean liners, steamers, or whatever you want to call them, they transported a lot of immigrants to the United States. So when the Titanic sank, it was a big to-do, an international tragedy. It's equivalent to what happened during 9/11. Okay, so what happened with the Titanic in 1912, equivalent to what we saw with 9/11. So it was that potent of an event. But you had a class structure. My point is you had a class structure on the Titanic. And all these lower classes were in what they called steerage or third class. So you had steerage, third class, you had second class, you had first class. But a tragedy all the way around. And so many missteps. But I was just fascinated, or all of a sudden been fascinated by the Titanic again. I don't know why. But I think it's one of those stories that really sticks with you. So, should we ban, this is a good time to ask this, should we ban any image of the Titanic? Because if there was a class structure on the Titanic, then obviously there must have been some form of supremacy on the Titanic amongst these different classes of white Europeans, right? So should we not, I mean, isn't the term Titanic itself, or the name of the ship, isn't that intimidating? We're going to call the ship Titanic. Now the other ship, the sister ship, which has got a really cool story, is the Olympic. Now, I don't want to drift too far here, but check out the story of the Olympic, the sister ship of the Titanic. That sucker has got a story behind it. Awesome story about the RMS Olympic. I believe that's what it's called, the RMS, or it may have been changed to a male. Most of these ships are given a female name, but I believe this was changed to a male name ship at one point. So back to the article here. The Division of Motor Vehicles, and this is in quotes, has determined that license plates bearing the Confederate battle flag have the potential to offend those who view them. Keep in mind, they haven't proven that it's offended people. They just say it has the potential to offend people. Unquote, the agency told the local outlet, "We have therefore concluded that display of the Confederate battle flag is inappropriate for display on specialty license plates which remain property of the state." Okay, so as I just mentioned, has there been any complaints recently within the past couple of weeks about the Confederate battle flag? Now, there were complaints, but I'll tell you when that was here in a moment. This is great. So, there's no mention of any recent, I'm talking within the past couple of weeks, recent incidents where people were offended by the display of the Confederate battle flag on a license plate in North Carolina. And if they were, which group was it? And when did the North Carolina DMV become a legislative body or defender of human rights? Because according to this next part here, it says, according to the outlet, the state agency had been issuing plates bearing a Confederate flag designed to members of the Sons of the Confederate Veterans. No problems until now, huh? Now, the move reportedly comes months after, I skipped this part, didn't mean to. A spokesperson for the group said members were not aware of the new policy until after they tried to have their plates renewed this year. Uh-huh. The move reportedly comes months after the agency said it had been receiving complaints about the plates during the summer amid widespread protest against police brutality and racism following the police killing of George Floyd. Well, there you have it, folks. Now, as I recall, and I'm not a history scholar by any means, but I can read, I can think, I can use logic and reason. Last time I checked, the Confederacy died in 1865. What the hell does the death of George Floyd, or that incident in Minneapolis, have to do with the Confederate battle flag? Has nothing to do with it. Seriously, folks, did the Confederate battle flag or a Confederate symbol pop off of a license plate out of North Carolina and march its way over to Minneapolis or up to Minneapolis and attack George Floyd? No. This was an isolated incident between George Floyd and these officers. By the way, isn't Minneapolis one of the cities that got burned down from groups like BLM and Antifa? Oh, yeah. So I just find it funny that what this article is really driving at, they don't mention until halfway through the article. The real reason they want to get rid of the Confederate battle flag is because people claim it represents racism and white supremacy. And the Confederate battle flag is the very reason that we had incidents like George Floyd. No, the reasons why we have incidents like George Floyd is because we had an isolated incident that happened between police and a citizen, and police that probably weren't as trained as they should be in a major city. So maybe it's not racism that's the problem. Maybe it's we need better police training in these larger cities. Maybe they're understaffed. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I'm not claiming to be an expert here. I'm just saying to you that you can't be pinning what happened with George Floyd or Breonna Taylor, what have you, on the Confederate battle flag. Because the Confederacy is long gone. It died in 1865. Thought I'd just mention that, point that out. Now, according to the outlet, the group filed a lawsuit in the 1990s, and they're talking about the Sons of Confederate Veterans. So according to the outlet, the group filed a lawsuit in the late 1990s in an effort to be labeled a civic organization and therefore be allowed to be issued a specialty plate. The group reportedly won the case, and the ruling paved the way for the Confederate flag specialty plate. So wait a minute. When did the North Carolina DMV become part of the judicial system? So they're now going to overturn the decision of a court? I don't think so. Goes on to say here, quote, consistent with ruling the North Carolina Division of Sons of the Confederate Veterans versus Faulkner, DMV will continue to recognize the North Carolina Division of Sons of Confederate Veterans, CCV, as a civic organization entitled to the issuance of specialty plate, the agency told the outlet. However, SCV's classification as a civic organization does not entitle it to dictate the contents of the government speech on that specialty plate, it added. Well, wait a minute. This is a government for the people, by the people, elected by the people. Our tax dollars pay for the DMV. We're talking about freedom of speech here. You know, yes, the DMV is a government agency. And yes, they have the power to issue these license plates. But guess what? We still have freedom of speech in this country, and our taxes pay these people's salary. It's a government agency that our tax dollars fund. We have every right to exercise our freedom of speech on these license plates. You know, the purpose of the First Amendment, I mentioned it yesterday, is to protect impolite speech. Somehow the North Carolina Department of Motor Vehicles does not get that. So last part of the article here. Despite pushback from the SCV on whether the move was a violation of the past ruling, the agency said it has attempted to get in touch with the organization to have another design considered for the plates. No, We should allow the Confederate battle flag. And I'll even go as far as saying this. We should allow the Nazi flag. And I'll tell you why. Because I know what happened in Nazi Germany. I happen to be part German. I've talked about this many times before. And we should have the Nazi flag so that people are reminded never to have what happened in Germany happen again. What happened in Germany was horrific. And it just didn't affect the Jews. It also affected Eastern Europeans. And it also affected fellow German citizens. Anybody who disagreed with Hitler was out. There were no ifs, ands, or buts. No ifs, ands, or buts in Hitler's world. What Hitler said went. That's the truth, folks. You're not going to read about that in a history book, but that's what happened. Take it from somebody of German descent. So yes, leave the Nazi flag up so people are reminded of what happened so it never happens again. And believe it or not, did you know this? That the Confederacy stood up against the North when the North was engaging in the illegal slave trade. There was a real issue in the middle part of the 19th century with the illegal slave trade. And people in the North were blind to this. They were allowing it to happen. And the South stood up and said, you can't be doing this. You can't be doing this. This is not what we believe in. Now, they had slavery. I know that sounds weird because they had slaves, but they did not believe in this illegal slave trade. And the illegal slave trade was causing all sorts of problems and trade issues or what have you. So the South actually stood up and said, no, we're not going to engage in an illegal slave trade. You may not know that, but that's actually what they did. And guess what? The North was the first side, if you will, the first side to have segregation laws, not the South. This was going on in the 1840s, 1850s. I mentioned this before. They were segregating the schools in Boston, Salem, Nantucket. This whole idea that the Confederacy is are the only ones to blame, rather, for what happened or what led up to the Civil War is ludicrous. Because guess what? There's blame to go on both sides. And Massachusetts was a major slave hub. So should we get rid of the Massachusetts state flag? Maybe the Massachusetts DMV should get rid of their state flag because of the fact that at one time they had slavery. I'm just saying. So I hope you enjoyed the article. If you did, enjoyed the video, please click that like button, subscribe, hit me up on Instagram at #JasonComposes, leave comments below. And now you can reach me at Twitter, Voice of the Composer Twitter. So once again, the title of this article, this is from thehill.com. North Carolina to stop issuing Confederate flag license plates. It's by Eris Foley. And that came out, this was published on January 30th. So I'll catch you next time. Voice of the Composer saying peace out. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great weekend. And God bless this great country.